Across America and around the world, once again, you're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper for Swiss America Trading. We went without a sponsor for many, many months in the early days of this program, the Hour of the Time. One of the reasons was we did not want to take anyone on as a sponsor who would try to manipulate us and tell us what we could say or what we could not say during this program. We also wanted to make sure that if we ever took a sponsor, which we eventually did, the first one was the Pilot Connection Society, and the second one was Backwoods Home Magazine, we wanted to make sure that if we did, it would be a product, a sponsor, a company, a person that we ourselves believed in, a product that we ourselves would use, and that we could wholeheartedly recommend to the listening audience. We were very lucky, folks, to have found Swiss America Trading. As you know, when WWCR was burned to the ground, an act of sabotage, we didn't know where to go. We didn't know if we would ever get back on the air. We did not know if WWCR would be rebuilt and would begin broadcasting again. I had no idea how to look for another station because I never was a radio personality, and still probably am not. I'm an information broker. I'm pretty proud of the organization that I built up. I'm proud of this radio show. And I'm proud of all the people who have helped make it possible and make it work. And one of those people are the folks at Swiss America Trading. Specifically, Craig Smith. Now, I want you to understand that this just is not some corporation out there. This is a corporation made up of people just like you and I. They care about this country. They care about the Constitution. They care about God. They care about the hour of the time. Now, instead of abandoning us like most sponsors would when WWCR was burned, Swiss America Trading went right to work finding us another place to broadcast. And within just a matter of hours, a new station, this station, WRNO, was found, thus making it possible for this program to continue to broadcast the truth to the world. The people at Swiss America Trading, folks, stand behind the hour of the time. And I want you to stand behind them. If you have not called them yet, please pick up the phone right now and do it. Swiss America Trading deals in protecting you through non-confiscatable, non-reportable hard assets. They have the kind of investments that I've recommended on this show many times. They have investments that I don't recommend. They have investments that I don't know anything about. But it's your decision what you do with your money. They have anything that you could possibly dream of to protect yourself from what's coming in the future, and specifically those means of protecting your assets that we have outlined in previous broadcasts of the hour of the time. So call Swiss America Trading right now. It doesn't cost you a thing, and you're going to get a free newsletter in the process that's chock full of information that you need to know. You've heard me inform you about the trouble this country is in, both politically and financially. And the time, folks, to act is now. Time is running out. Look around you, read the paper, listen to the news. Now, if you can't figure that out without somebody having to tell you, maybe you better not call. But for those of you who do understand it, call now. The time to act is now. Don't wait until it's too late. Call the experts at Swiss America Trading at 1-800-289-2646. That's 1-800-289-2646, and have them show you how to protect yourself. Call 1-800-289-2646. That's 1-800-289-2646. And mention my name, William Cooper, and they'll send you a free newsletter on protecting your future. And folks, by protecting your future, you're keeping the future of this program and freedom for the world alive. Call today. Call now. 1-800-289-2646. That's 1-800-289-2646. And you'll be glad that you did.
In the mountains up near Sandpoint, north of Naples, Idaho, eagles gathered there together to guard the truth, so you might know. Down the road that followed Deep Creek, at the turn that crossed the bridge, federal marshals had the roadblock to mark the siege of Ruby Ridge. There the armies of the enemy slayed your bright and only son, nearly killed your close companion when the shrapnel pierced his lung. We stand with you, Randy Weaver, 'cause your Lord and Savior lives. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is. On that evening, late one August, you were forced to take your stand. There two strangers as they trespassed drew first blood on private land. Governor Andrus back in Boise let the enemy tell him lies, and from his anti-Christ decision, Sam and Vicky lost their lives. Federal agents, U.S. Marshals, and FBI men stormed the hill, all on false, fictitious charges, given orders shoot to kill. We stand with you, Randy Weaver, 'cause your Lord and Savior lives. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is. Though the armies of the enemy may surround us in the night, there's a host of heavenly angels hovering near, ready to fight. We stand with you, Randy Weaver. We are proud to call you friend. As we gather here together, stand beside you till the end. We stand with you, Randy Weaver, 'cause your Lord and Savior lives. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is.
Wheresoever Eagles Gather, the Ballad of Randy Weaver. Lyrics and music by Carl Klang. Folks, if you'd like to have a copy of that song and the other one by Carl Klang called Paper Money, send $6 postpaid. That's $6 postpaid to Carl Klang. Last name spelled K-L-A-N-G. Carl Klang, Post Office Box 217. That's Post Office Box 217. Colton, Oregon. Colton, Oregon. 97017. That's 97017, United States of America, USA. That's $6 postpaid to Carl Klang, P.O. Box 217, Colton, Oregon 97017. That's $6, folks. Includes postage and handling, and you'll get the song Wheresoever Eagles Gather, the Ballad of Brandy Weaver, and another song, Paper Money, lyrics and music by Carl Klang. Now, there's a couple of other things that we need to cover, folks. Stan is retiring for the last time and will not be working with us anymore. So please don't bother Stan and Elma by calling them on their phone unless you want to wish them well and tell them goodbye and you've made friends with them over the period of time that we've been together. If not, please do not call the number that you've been using to ask for information or get an information packet or talk to a representative. We're in the process of getting a new number together that you will be able to call. The Post Office Box 3299 in Camp Verde, Arizona is still good. And I'll give you that address right now. It's William Cooper. Post Office Box 3299, Camp Verde, Arizona 86322. That's William Cooper, Post Office Box 3299, Camp Verde, Arizona 86322. Once again, William Cooper, Post Office Box 3299, Camp Verde, Arizona 86322. Now, for those of you who don't understand what Camp Verde is, and believe me, the first time I heard it, I didn't either. Camp is spelled C-A-M-P, just like camping out, and Verde is spelled V as in Victor, E-R-D-E. It's Spanish, and it means green. So you can still use that address, folks, for a short time. Now, I highly recommend that if you want to survive what's coming in the future, if you want to understand what's happening to us and why, order my book, Behold a Pale Horse. The title is Behold a Pale Horse, folks. It's 500 pages of the most well-documented, most suppressed information ever printed in any one book in the entire history of the world. And that's been stated by experts. Don't take my word for it. Order the book. It's guaranteed. If you get that book, look through it right then. If you don't agree that you need that information and it's going to help you and it's worth the money that you paid for it, send it right back to us and we'll refund your money with no questions asked. The only thing that we ask is you send the book back in brand new condition just like you received it. If it's been read, if the pages have been turned down, if the cover has been broken back, we will not honor the guarantee. So make sure that you understand the terms. Look through the book when you get it. If you don't agree that it's worth the money that you paid for it, send it right back and we'll refund your money, no questions asked. The price of the book for CAGI members is $20 plus $5 postage and handling. For non-CAGI members, if you're not a member of CAGI, it's $25 plus $5 postage and handling. Now, this is a heavy book. It's a big book. It's 500 pages. I am not self-published. I do not determine the price of the book nor the price of shipping. That's determined by the shipper. We use UPS, and we always insure whatever we send out. The cost is high for this book, believe me. Also, the price from the publisher is $25. We've reduced it $5 for CAGI members. Now, since I'm not self-published, folks, I have to buy the book from the publisher just like any bookstore. So we're taking a loss on the CAGI members when we sell it to them at $20, but the CAGI members are the people who are doing the work, digging out the information, and that's why we give them a break on everything that we do. For instance, stereo copies put together on a digital mixer of The Hour of the Time are available. Each episode of The Hour of the Time is available if you would like to order it from us. And the price for CAGI members is $5 plus $2.50 postage and handling. So it's $7.50 altogether. For CAGI members, $5 plus $2.50 postage and handling. For anybody else, if you're not a CAGI member, it's $15 plus $2.50 postage and handling for a total of $17.50 per hour of the hour of the time. Now, we're trying to order a machine that will enable us to make the copies much faster, and if we're able to do that, we'll be able to drop the price even further for non-members, for non-CAGI members. For CAGI members, I don't know if we're going to be able to go much below $5, but we're going to try. So stick with us, folks, and remember that every episode of The Hour of the Time is available. You can order these tapes. And they're on TDK 60-minute tapes. They're good quality tapes. They're not these white tapes with the flimsy stuff that breaks in about 2 weeks. These are good quality TDK tapes. The program is put together on a digital mixer. It's in stereo. All the music is beautiful stereo. We use only the best CDs for the music on this show. And if you've noticed, only the best music. Now... Some of you older folks don't like some of this music, but everything that we use on the show has a message, and that's why we use it. And you know what? If you just like one certain kind of music and you're not willing to listen to the other kinds of music, I suggest that you watch a few episodes of Archie Bunker and see if you're looking at yourself in the mirror. Otherwise, hold on to your hat, folks, because it's going to be a rocky ride. Well, let's get into the program now, and we're going to start where we left off. And we left off under terrible circumstances in a cabin near a place called Ruby Ridge in the state of Idaho with a dead 13-year-old boy in the birthing shack, a dead mother, Vicki Weaver, lying in a pool of blood in their cabin, 2 men wounded, and several children, including an 8-month-old baby, probably scarred psychologically for the rest of their lives. Surrounded by over 400 agents of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, United States Marshals, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, teams from the Special Operations Division of the Department of Defense, called Delta, and probably more. The FBI now faced a serious problem. They had killed an unarmed mother standing at the door with her baby in her arms. They had no warrant for Vicki and were not likely to get one. From the 9/30/92 Rogers grand jury testimony, page 30. Moreover, the FBI had discovered that Vicki had not been involved in the shooting at the Y. 9/30/92 Rogers grand jury testimony, page 30. It appears, therefore, that after Vicki was shot, the officers realized they had no legal or moral justification for having killed Vicki. Rogers reluctantly admitted to the grand jury, quote, "But apparently there wasn't enough evidence at that point to link her directly with the killing of Marshall Deegan," unquote. 9/30/92 Rogers grand jury testimony, page 30. Since they had no right to shoot her, the FBI had no alternative but to later claim her death was an accident. In the meantime, the federal officers pretended they did not know they had killed a second member of the Weaver family. As for Harris, the FBI told the press that they had shot at Harris because Harris was preparing to shoot a helicopter. That's from Bonner's Ferry Herald, an article entitled "Clues at Weaver Cabin" by Mike Wayland. But the helicopter pilot himself testified he stayed well out of range of rifle fire when he flew in the vicinity. From the 9/17/92 Costanza grand jury testimony, pages 26, 27, and 39. When Horiuchi claims he was shooting Harris to save the helicopter, he faces 8 other snipers who apparently did not feel that the helicopter was jeopardized, for only Horiuchi admits to the shooting. Moreover, Horiuchi admits he does not know where the helicopter was when he opened fire. 9/17/92, Horiuchi, grand jury testimony, page 36 and 47. Nor does he explain how the helicopter could possibly be in danger while Harris and the others were running back to the house to escape for their lives. Unless the rules of engagement were indeed illegal, Horiuchi needed no excuse for having shot at Harris. It will be remembered that the rules of engagement permitted the snipers, indeed commanded them, to shoot on sight any adult male with a weapon, and Harris was armed. The rules were said to contemplate an ongoing firefight. 9/30/92, Rogers Grand Jury Testimony, page 15. So the FBI could argue that killing an armed subject on sight would be justified. But by the time the witnesses appeared before the grand jury, the FBI had apparently abandoned the rules of engagement as the basis for their action and now attempted to make their shooting comport to the law, namely that the shootings had been necessitated to protect innocent persons in imminent danger. Despite the fact that Weaver's back was to the sniper, and presumably to the helicopter behind him, Horiuchi claimed in his testimony to the grand jury, quote, "At this time, I decided I needed to shoot that individual to protect the individuals in the helicopter," unquote. 9/17/92, Horiuchi Grand Jury Testimony, page 48. Later, he was to claim that when he shot at Harris while Harris was running, that the person in the helicopter is in danger. 9/17/92, Horiuchi Grand Jury Testimony, page 54. Indeed, not a single shot was ever fired by anyone from the Reber residence. 9/30/92, Rogers Grand Jury Testimony, pages 60 and 61. In his testimony to the grand jury, Horiuchi further abandoned the rules of engagement and sought to establish another legally justifiable reason why he might have shot at Harris and hit Vicky. He suggested that perhaps the armored personnel carriers were on their way up, and that when the back door of the carrier drops open, the Weavers might have been able to shoot into the back door of the carriers. 9/17/92, Horiuchi Grand Jury Testimony, page 51. The carriers were not present at the time of the shooting. They did not arrive there until the next day, and of course, no one shot at them. In the meantime, the press was told that Harris actually did shoot at a helicopter from the front porch of the house, that a, quote, perimeter guard took aim and fired from approximately 300 yards away, unquote, and that Harris disappeared into the house. This is from an article from the Bonners Ferry Herald entitled Clues at Weaver Cabin by Mike Wayland. Federal authorities further told the press that the reason Vicky had been shot was because she, too, had fired on the helicopter. Article, report, Vicky Weaver was shot after family fired on helicopter, from the Associated Press Wire. After Vicky was shot, Senior Agent in Charge Glenn went so far as to log the fact that the FBI helicopter had drawn fire from within the house, and that thereafter shots were exchanged between the snipers and the subjects in the house. That's from the FBI log for 8/21/92 at 21:12 hours. These stories, folks, are now admittedly false. Indeed, Commander Richard Rogers himself told the grand jury that, quote, the shots that Lon Horiuchi took about 6 p.m. on the 22nd were the last shots that I'm aware of that were fired up there, unquote. 9/30/92, Rogers Grand Jury Testimony, page 60. It is informative to note at this juncture that Horiuchi, an expert marksman and team leader, armed with a precision sniping weapon with a 10-power scope, now claims that both of his shots hit persons he did not intend to hit. Some sniper, wouldn't you say? Vicky's death was now supposedly accidental, and Randy Weaver was supposedly shot when Horiuchi accidentally mistook Weaver for Harris. Harris, too, was supposedly hit with fragments of the bullet that went through Vicky's head and struck Harris in the arm and lungs. Sammy's death was also attributable to accident. By the time the officers were called to the grand jury, every person shot or killed had been shot by accident. You know what I say to that, folks? Bullshit. In the meantime, the FBI acted as if Vicky were alive. They brought up their expert negotiator, accompanied with a psychiatrist. The FBI claimed that although they made 2 attempts to attach microphones to the house as well as a closed-circuit television, that both mics failed and the television equipment was not operative. Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 40. Although the FBI told the New York Times that they were using listening devices that allowed them to hear conversations and even the baby's cries in the cabin, this is from the New York Times, August 26, 1992. In the meantime, Randy Weaver was hollering to the FBI that his wife was dead, but the FBI continued to speak to her as if she were alive. From the standpoint of the people inside the Weaver house, they were being fired upon by unidentified assailants without cause. These assailants had killed Vicky before their very eyes, including the eyes of the surviving children, one a girl of only 10 years of age. Commander Rogers recognized this fact. Quote, "It was obvious to the people inside the cabin that they had people around them, our sniper observers. Of course, I assume they didn't know who they were, but they knew someone was out there." Unquote. From the 9/30/92 Rogers Grand Jury Testimony, page 47. Next, the FBI placed a shotgun-carrying robot on the porch of the little house, Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 53, and then wondered why Randy wouldn't pick up the phone to talk to them. The negotiator, claiming he had trained thousands of officers, Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 4, treated Randy Weaver as a paranoid personality, Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 86. From the testimony, Lansley, and I think that's what Randall was, along with this paranoid ideation, he was extremely irritable, saw people plotting against him. From the Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 87. But it was the FBI itself who thought Randy's sister, who the FBI had asked to help, might encourage Randy to kill himself and the children. Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, pages 22 through 24. And the FBI had, quote, "real questions about Bo Greitz," unquote, and folks, so do I and many other patriots. Believe me, Greitz is dirty, and we're going to get to the bottom of that on another episode of the Hour of the Time. That's from the Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 34, who later accomplished what the FBI could not, the surrender of both Weaver and Harris. During all of this time, the FBI continued to claim that it did not know that Vicky was dead. Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 37. In the meantime, Vicky's unprepared body had remained in the cabin for over a week. Some of the snipers reported they could detect an unpleasant odor emanating from the house. That's from the FBI log, page 45. And during all of this time, the federal negotiator, claiming he was ignorant of Vicky's death, continued to taunt Randy Weaver and the children by asking questions about Vicky and directing questions to the dead Vicky about her baby. Sometimes they said things like, quote, "Good morning, Mrs. Weaver. We had pancakes for breakfast. What did you have?" unquote. The baby was often awake and crying for its mother's milk. That's from Sarah Weaver to the Des Moines, Iowa Register, September 13, 1992. The FBI, steadfast in its position that the Weavers were dangerous, never left the armored personnel carriers when near the Weaver house. Yet others were able to approach the house, including a preacher who had never met Randy. Bo Greitz and Jack McLean both made several trips to the house and talked to Weaver and Harris. That's from the FBI log, page 45. Although neither had known them before that date, and that's important, folks, because in speeches and talks and radio interviews, Greitz had claimed to know Weaver. And Greitz had talked about Weaver as early as late 1989, and talked about him again at Freedom Call 90 in Las Vegas in July of 1990, which I attended and witnessed. He stated that he had received a letter from Randy Weaver, a man who had served in Vietnam with him, a good trooper, as he termed it, a good soldier, who was in danger of having his whole family wiped out by the federal government. Don't go away, folks. It's time to take our break. I'll be right back after this very short pause. Up to the cabin and talk. Folks, this is William Cooper speaking to you for Swiss America Trading. Now, if you have not yet called Swiss America Trading and told them that you listen to the Hour of the Time with William Cooper to receive your free newsletter, do it now. Do it now. So many people ask me when I travel around the country, how can I save my assets? I also get that question in a great percentage of the mail that we receive here. How can I protect my assets from what's coming in this economic collapse that we're expecting? Well, folks, Swiss America Trading has many of the answers. They have many of the investments that we have recommended on this show. Call them, 1-800-289-2646. That's 1-800-289-2646. Tell them that William Cooper sent you, and they'll send you a newsletter chock full of information that you need to know. You'll be glad that you did. Call now, 1-800-289-2646. That's 1-800-289-2646. Let the experts at Swiss America Trading help you help yourself. Call now, 1-800-289-2646. That's 1-800-289-2646. And believe me, you'll be glad that you did.
In the mountains up near Sandpoint, north of Naples, Idaho, eagles gathered there together to guard the truth, so you might know. Down the road that followed Deep Creek, at the turn that crossed the bridge, federal marshals had the roadblock to mark the siege of Ruby Ridge. There the armies of the enemy slayed your bright and only son, nearly killed your close companion when the shrapnel pierced his lung. We stand with you, Randy Weaver, 'cause your Lord and Savior lives. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is. On that evening, late one August, you were forced to take your stand. There two strangers as they trespassed drew first blood on private land. Governor Andrus back in Boise let the enemy tell him lies, and from his anti-Christ decision, Sam and Vichy lost their lives. Federal agents, U.S. Marshals, and FBI men stormed the hill, all on false, fictitious charges, given orders shoot to kill. We stand with you, Randy Weaver, 'cause your Lord and Savior lives. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is. Though the armies of the enemy may surround us in the night, they're the host of heavenly angels hovering near, ready to fight. We stand with you, Randy Weaver. We are proud to call you friend. As we gather here together, stand beside you till the end. We stand with you, Randy Weaver, 'cause your Lord and Savior lives. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is.
When at last Bo Greitz simply walked up to the cabin and talked to Randy, Randy told Greitz that Vicky was dead. From the FBI log, page 45. And when thereafter the FBI could no longer claim ignorance concerning her death, the negotiator next took the position that although Vicky had been the, quote, real strong person, unquote, upon her death, Sarah, the 16-year-old, had taken her place. Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 55. The negotiator said, quote, but at this stage of the game, once again, the children are deciding what's going to happen next. Sarah wasn't buying it. She didn't want to come out, unquote. Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 56. At the same time, Gene Glenn, the chief of operations for the FBI, told the press that the children, quote, were considered hostages, unquote, from the New York Times, August 26, 1992. While privately, the FBI admitted that, quote, this is being viewed as a crisis intervention as opposed to hostage negotiations, unquote, from the FBI log, page 18. Both Weaver and Harris, the latter gravely wounded and near death, eventually surrendered as a result of the efforts of Bo Greitz and Jack McLamb. However, the FBI negotiator took credit for the work of Greitz and McLamb by claiming he had, quote, trained Greitz on the spot, unquote, and that Greitz did everything the negotiator said to do or to say. Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 33. During the time of the standoff, there was an operational headquarters, a command post that was occupied by the various agents in charge, team captains, negotiators, and others, including the chief of the operation, Gene Glenn, who, in these war games, they referred to as, quote, the Allied Supreme Commander, unquote. Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 63. Also at that post during the negotiations was Assistant United States Attorney Ron Howen, who authored the indictment in this case, its several amendments, and who prosecutes this case. Mr. Howen was at the command post at various relevant times during the siege. Reference is made in the FBI log to his involvement at the command post on 7 separate occasions. Moreover, Howen went with the officers to the Y, where he witnessed the search for and the recovery of evidence. From the FBI log, page 16. As a witness, he would have been privy to many of the conversations that occurred at the command post and elsewhere between Glenn, the other special agents in charge, Richard Rogers, the commander who briefed the snipers, senior agent in charge Robin Montgomery from Portland, team leaders Hazen and McGavin, who directed the snipers, and others. He must have known what rules of engagement were in place. The United States Attorney's Office authored a note that was sent into the Weaver home during the siege. It was signed by Ron Howen. From Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 65. Further, Mr. Howen has made himself a witness by offering unsworn testimony on various matters to the grand jury, some examples of which are as follows. Grand Juror. How does Randy Weaver fit into this? Is he a member of these groups, these orders? Howen. I don't say that Randy Weaver was a member of the order. He was not a member of Order 2. He wasn't a member of the last group that came out in 1982. There is circumstantial evidence to believe that he intended to use his family as the group and Kevin Harris. From Byerly Grand Jury Testimony, pages 42 and 43. On another occasion, Howen testified to the grand jury as follows. Howen. Well, certainly that concern is something I think every one of us would share in that kind of situation, and would certainly understand the difficult circumstances of the situations you are under. And I think we can appreciate how badly we feel about addressing Vicki for 5 or 6 days when she is not even alive. Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 73. He went on to testify, Howen, that's something you would screen as a negotiator, because you wouldn't want it to inflame him or cause him to start killing people inside the house if he gets into a murder, I think, as you quoted before, a homicide-suicide type situation, which I think was your worst nightmare. From the Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 74. With the witness, Lansley, still in the stand, Mr. Howen then testifies to the grand jury as an expert as to how Vicki was shot. Howen, and I think there is fair evidence before you that she is not standing up tall, perhaps holding a baby in her arms, looking out the door, that if she is shot and the door is open, then it's consistent with her crouching down in the doorway. Howen, at this time, there is circumstantial evidence to believe she, Vicki, was killed as Kevin Harris is entering the door by a second shot fired by a sniper, and again, as you have seen the door and the location of it, I believe it's a fair conclusion, and you have to make your own mind up, of course. She was not standing upright, but must have been crouched over a little bit. Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 100. He testified to the grand jury about the listening devices utilized by the FBI and asked for confirmation of his testimony to that effect by the witness, Lansley. Howen, Special Agent Lansley, even though you couldn't hear it, didn't we have a device attached to the house so we could hear what was going on inside the house? I authorized the order. Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 39. Howen, did we not also obtain an order from a district judge to install a CCTV in that house, penetrate the skin of that house? Lansley, I don't know. From the Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 40. He testified to the frustration that all of the decision-makers were having at the command post. Howen, it was the frustration of all of us down at the command post is to not have access to that, tapes, and access information as well. So we shared that with you. From the Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 41. Still another time, Howen testifies. Howen, there is a woman who, from my position down the hill, but I recall a woman by the name of Jackie Brown making trips up and down there. She had clothing, food, things for the baby. From the Lansley Grand Jury Testimony, page 57. During the testimony of Byerly, Howen transforms the fiction of Hollywood into reality for the grand jury. His testimony deals with the sawed-off guns that Weaver supposedly sold to the undercover agent. Howen, if any of you saw the movie, quote, The Terminator, unquote, remember the first few scenes where the shotgun is under the coat, under a long coat? It's on a string. Those are the things that cannot been seen. Those of you that have seen it, fine. Those that haven't, the foreman finally interrupts him. That's from the Byerly Grand Jury Testimony, page 18. Faced with this prosecutorial nightmare of wrongdoing by federal agents, the Assistant United States Attorney, Ron Howen, himself a participant, himself a witness, now sought to manipulate the case in such a manner as to center the case on the religious beliefs of the Weavers, beliefs he knew were unpopular with mainstream America, beliefs he knew would prejudice the defendants before a jury and cause the jury to focus on such beliefs rather than the wrongful acts of the officers. And that's exactly the same thing they did in the Waco massacre. To accomplish this, Howen set out to convince the grand jury that the Weavers and Harris, as a family, were equivalent to the criminal element in the Aryan nations. Howen intentionally attempts, and we think successfully, to prejudice the grand jury against Weaver and Harris. He does so by guiding an FBI agent, one James Davis, through a long, bloody narrative concerning the heinous crimes committed by the Order, a group he admits these defendants did not belong to. He subjected the grand jury to many pages of testimony by one Herb Byerly, an agent for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Treasury Department, in which another set of horrid crimes by the Order were described in detail. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Order is, it was really called the Sons of Liberty. It was a patriotic group that became persecuted and hunted by the federal government with the intent to destroy and kill every single one of them. And finally, they turned to criminal activities for their survival. Criminal activities are not legal, are not right, are not lawful. They are not condoned by me or any other patriot in this country. And therefore, they deserve to be apprehended, tried, and convicted. Instead, what happened was the same thing, folks, that happened in Waco, Texas. Burned to death. No one, folks, no one could hear the dreadful details of these horrors without hating and fearing the group of terrorists, murderers, and butchers who were responsible for them. For the court to fully understand the extent to which Howen went in manipulating and prejudicing the grand jury and destroying their independence, we believe it necessary that every word of these pages from Davis's and Byerly's testimony be read. For as the court can determine for himself, this testimony was so egregious, so vile, so invidious, so calculated to prejudice the grand jury against these defendants, and so uncalled for and unconnected in any genuine way to these defendants, that the entire indictment must be deemed infected, obtained as it was, through inexcusable prejudice, and dismissed. We believe when the court reads this testimony, it will agree that in the court's entire life as a lawyer and a judge, the court has never seen nor heard of a prosecutor who took such advantage of his office and in such a way utterly disregarded all boundaries of propriety, abandoned his duty to administer justice, refused to be governed by rules of fair play, and used his power to supplant truth with prejudice. In short, the presentation of the Davis and Byerly testimony was so flagrant and egregious as to infringe on the grand jury's ability to exercise its independent judgment in the charging decision and destroy the integrity of the grand jury process. We turn to these pages of Davis's testimony to summarize. Howen admits that Harris and Weaver have no contact with and are not linked to the Aryan nations. Davis Grand Jury Testimony, pages 35 and 36. Despite this admission, he leads Davis through over 30 pages of testimony that begins by tying in the Aryan nations to the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, and other hated groups. Howen then leads the witness through a host of crimes that those who are associated with the Aryan nations have committed. He has Davis tell how Bob Matthews robbed a bank in Spokane and how they began to make counterfeit money. Their goal was to, quote, mess up the economy, unquote, because Jews governed the economy. That's from the Davis Grand Jury Testimony, page 42. They wanted to spread their money into minority communities so that minorities, presumably blacks, would be arrested. It's from the Davis Grand Jury Testimony, page 42. Howen then had the witness, Davis, tell the grand jury about a book written by William Pierce, who heads a white supremacist organization called the National Alliance. The book was called The Turner Diaries. Davis provides pages of testimony about the content of this book, obviously a novel, without connecting it in any way with Harris or Weaver. Quote, The bottom line of this book is that Turner, the hero, goes on a mission to establish a white government in the United States. At some point in the book, they get so much money and such a large army that they are able to take on the American government. In the book, they were able to obtain a nuclear weapon, and they were able to destroy the country of Israel. And in the book, Turner's last mission, in which he self-destructs, is to blow up the Pentagon. Unquote. That's from the Davis Grand Jury Testimony, page 43. Davis now describes how the order turned to armored car robberies, one in Seattle for $500,000, followed by one in Ukiah, California, for $3.6 million. He tells how the members of the Aryan nations bought a large tract of land and began to do military training. He describes their supplies. Quote, trailers full of army supplies, bedrolls, boots, enough stuff to equip a large number of men, unquote. Davis Grand Jury Testimony, page 45. He tells the grand jury that Bob Matthews went to Philadelphia and recruited members of the Nazi Party, and that he went south and recruited members of the Ku Klux Klan. Bringing the danger of this all home to the grand jury in response to Howland's questions, Davis tells how there was a Boise Command Center manned 24 hours a day. From the Davis Grand Jury Testimony, page 46. Next, Howland leads the witness into what he calls Step 5. Quote, the subject of it was assassination of anybody they considered to be an enemy of the organization. Unquote. Davis gives names and tells the grand jury that these people committed 3 murders. The first was of a heavy drinker named Walter West. Davis then tells how the murderers took West out into the woods where they had already dug a grave to bury him. Someone by the name of Kemp was to be the executioner. Kemp hits the man in the head with a hammer, but that doesn't kill him. So with West on the ground yelling at him, Dewey picks up a gun and shoots him in the head, and then they bury him. From the Davis Grand Jury Testimony, page 48. This wasn't enough. Davis next tells the grand jury, quote, I can't overemphasize their bitterness, and this is true of most of the white supremacy groups toward the Jews, unquote. Davis Grand Jury Testimony, page 48. Now he goes into the details of the Alan Berg murder, how Berg, the radio talk show host, was followed by the mother of Matthew's girlfriend, and how Bruce Pierce walked up and killed him. 22 shots were fired. From the Davis Grand Jury Testimony, page 50. After lunch, Howland again reminds the grand jury that this organization does indeed have a message center in Boise and only 5 or 6 blocks away from where the jurors were sitting, and that several of these people lived in town. Davis Grand Jury Testimony, pages 51 and 52. Davis tells how this group forged passports and birth certificates, and how they took the name of a dead child and used the name of the dead child for creating new identifications. After that, he tells the jury about another Brinks job in San Francisco. Then he describes in detail how the Ukiah job was pulled off. I might tell you as an aside, folks, that the United States government, the intelligence agencies, and other undercover agencies of police departments, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation do the same thing, take on identities of dead children for their cover. They can get real birth certificates, real identification, and this cannot be detected unless you personally know that this child is dead. Davis, they had a couple pickups. They pulled up in front of the pickup, held up a sign, quote, get out or you will die, unquote. The people in the armored car did not get out quickly, so they sprayed it with automatic weapons fire. That got them all out. Then they started unloading money out of the back end and putting it into the back of their pickup. One of the men, and this is Robert Matthews, who was the leader, as he was unloading money, left his handgun sitting in the armored car, so when they all fled, there's a gun left behind, unquote. This was allegedly how they traced Matthews to the robbery. Now Davis tells the grand jury how counterfeit bills were being made in Boise and how the police caught a man passing them in Philadelphia. He tells how the people with the Secret Service and the ATF get together and figured out the case of the armed robbery, how the arrests of these people were conducted, how Matthews died in the shootout. That's not true, folks. Matthews died. He burned to death in a house when they set it on fire. They also talk about how they tied the bullets recovered after the arrest to the bullets that killed Berg. The story goes on and on. Yarborough, one of the members, tries to jump out of a second-story building. Davis grand jury testimony, page 61. After testifying for parts of 2 days, the climax to the story was rendered by the witness. Davis, once or twice in there, shot at some agents as they tried to get in a little closer and that type of thing, and on December the 8th, Matthews just opened fire and died subsequently in a gun battle with the agents that were there. After that, do you want me to keep going? From the Davis grand jury testimony, page 62. Actually, Matthews died in a fire. Now, I don't condone the illegal acts of any of these people, folks, but I want you to know the truth. And we're out of time for tonight. We will continue to the conclusion, I hope, tomorrow night, if not, the next night. Good night, and God bless each and every single one of you.
In the mountains up near Sandpoint, north of Naples, Idaho, eagles gathered there together, guard the truth so you might know. Down the road that followed Deep Creek, at the turn that crossed the bridge, federal marshals had the roadblock to mark the siege of Ruby Ridge. There the armies of the enemy slayed your bride and only son, nearly killed your close companion when the shrapnel pierced his lung. We stand with you, Randy Weaver, 'cause your Lord and Savior lives. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is. On that evening, late one August, you were forced to take your stand. There two strangers as they trespassed drew first blood on private land. Governor Andrus back in Boise let the enemy tell him lies, and from his anti-Christ decision, Sam and Vicky lost their lives. Federal agents, U.S. Marshals, and FBI men stormed the hill, all on false, fictitious charges, given orders shoot to kill. We stand with you, Randy Weaver, 'cause your Lord and Savior lives. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is. Though the armies of the enemy may surround us in the night, there's a host of heavenly angels hovering near, ready to fight. We stand with you, Randy Weaver. We are proud to call you friend. As we gather here together, stand beside you till the end. We stand with you, Randy Weaver, 'cause your Lord and Savior lives. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is. Wheresoever eagles gather, that is where his body is.